Mr. Hyder. Mr. Hyder has a lovely wife, Billy, and we both serve in the DAR. We are all about historical preservation. It's a beautiful day on these Capitol steps where public policy making originates for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, a place where men and women are goal-oriented while working under the watchful eye of the media and the citizens who hold them accountable. On these Capitol grounds where active citizenship is encouraged, yet some topics discussed and debated seem to divide us as Kentuckians before a compromise is reached, a compromise that is in the best interest of the future of all Kentuckians. I come to you as a historian and citizen of Hardin County, birthplace of President Abraham Lincoln, my first cousin 5 generations removed, and great leaders in both this capital city and services of the Confederate States, like 6th Kentucky Volunteer Infantry Captain Fayette Hewitt, our Kentucky State Auditor, 6th Kentucky Volunteer Infantry Colonel Martin Hardin Cofer, a Kentucky judge of the Court of Appeals, and Major Thomas Hercules Hayes of the 6th Kentucky Infantry, a Kentucky State Senator and son-in-law of two-time Kentucky Governor John LaRue Helm, as well as the brother-in-law of Confederate States Army General Ben Hardin Helm, a lifelong resident of Hardin County who himself was the beloved brother-in-law of Abraham Lincoln. Yes, folks, Kentucky, family ties and her history are quite complicated. My family, like many others in this state, sent men in arms in defense of Southern states' rights and the preservation of the Union. Some called Lincoln president, and others knew Davis as theirs. One thing of which I have no doubt is that the statues of both of these men, great leaders born in this state and providing governmental services as well as military services to this nation before their rise to presidency in a divided nation, need to remain standing in this rotunda, a public space for future generations to see and ponder upon their legacies to America and Kentuckians, with certain emphasis on united we stand, divided we will fall. Amen. We are not here today to explore Lincoln's legacy. There may come a time in the future when men and women once again climb these steps in protest or in defense of Lincoln's placement here as a Kentucky leader worth admiration, when a dangerous precedent of history being disguised to serve a different purpose other than truth-aware education has been set. But today, my fellow Kentuckians, we are here to make sure that such a precedent never takes hold. Hear, hear. We are here to give voice to the opposition to the removal of Jefferson Davis's statue and the poor premise that 4 years of war is all that defines this man before a nation who has survived one great war on her own soil falls the victim of hatred and bigotry fueled by historical ignorance. There are those who wish the annals of history to say Jefferson Davis did not work to honor their future or this great nation. And this statement is simply not true. Amen. When you look upon the features of Jefferson Davis in this Capitol, does it cause you to want to know his story and why he stands so tall in this great hall? His story is deeply rooted in that of our nation's capital. As U.S. Secretary of War during Pierce's administration, Davis was in charge of the overall construction of our nation's capital. The design for the sculpture that crowns the sprawling house of our national legislators was approved by Davis on April 1856, after 2 previous designs were deemed inappropriate to the people who were born free and should not be enslaved. And while Secretary of War Davis enlarged the Army, an army he once served in, and strengthened coastal defenses, he also directed 3 surveys for railroads to the Pacific. He was a visionary leader. That same Jefferson Davis, during the 30th United States Congress, the only Congress in which Abraham Lincoln served, was made a regent of the Smithsonian Institution. And from December the 30th, 1847, until March 1851, he was one of team, regents and members of the committee building and the Committee on Copyrights for our National Museum. This is the same Jefferson Davis who, upon his resignation as United States Senator for the great state of Mississippi on January the 21st, 1861, addressed the members of that great legislative body about constitutional state rights to secede from the Union and Mississippi's step towards severing those ties. You know, a constitutional question regarding the topic of secession has never been addressed by the judicial system, and it's still hotly debated in an arena of public opinion. That's why this country is free. It's a public opinion regarding all things associated with the history of the Confederacy, the history of the South, but more importantly, the history of Kentucky that brings us here today as men and women in a fight, a real fight to preserve family histories, the history of this state and the history of our nation and its leaders. As a student in school many years ago, back in the 70s, I learned places, dates, and battles associated with war, the names of 2 different presidents, both born in log cabins in the state, and some of the generals of the opposing armies who surrendered to who won. School did not teach me the rest of the story, but a trip to this state capitol in the 7th grade caused me to read further on Davis and Henry Clay, men that stood larger than life in this place for Kentuckians to remember. I did a little digging up of bones through historical research, and not like the desecration of graves like some Memphis mayor and his city council is advocating. I came to appreciate the men, even though I questioned some of their actions. How can Henry Clay be known as a war hawk when he was instrumental in the peace agreement drafted into the War of 1812? I don't know, but that's part of history. The Jefferson Davis statue, an artwork in a public space, a space that is always open without charging a fee for viewing, allowed me to expand my mind to the truthful history of this nation and become more tolerant of the heritage of its people. Tolerance is a necessity for men and women who work on behalf of the citizens of the Commonwealth in this great building of democracy. The roots of tolerance are indeed epitomized in this rotunda. Statues of men who favor debate and compromise to get work of the nation done, and me when faced with the realities of life in upheaval. Citizens of this great nation in revolt of current days of events. These men, these 2 men, Abraham Lincoln, Jefferson Davis, led this nation based on their understanding of the Constitution that governs the country. I have read period accounts of happenings written by men and the public and the soldier during the war. I have read the newspaper stories, papers published in both the North and the South. And if I were to be intolerant of one man's actions and want to erase the history of his existence in this state of Jefferson Davis' birth, a state in which he was educated, a state that he represented in national offices, I wouldn't take Jefferson Davis out. It would be Cousin Lincoln. Cousin Lincoln wanted those Confederate states under his control. The federal government enjoyed revenues from those rich Southlands. Cousin Lincoln sent his military into these states to take control by whatever means was necessary. And Cousin Lincoln allowed General Stephen Burbridge to place this state under military control and to murder our citizens without just cause.